things just took a major shift in Montreal, as with the recent updates on Alex Newhook and Kaiden Guhle being far worse than anticipated, the Montreal Canadiens have already started making moves by calling up a star young forward from Laval, and even Elliotte Friedman on the recent 32 Thoughts has linked Montreal to a player that we discussed just a few days ago, a defensive center who's good at faceoffs. There is a lot going on in Montreal now, and this represents a shift for this team this season, and we're going to break it all down, and we'll start with Elliotte Friedman, Jesse, because Friedman, look, he's the biggest source in hockey. It is what it is. And on 32 Thoughts, he was talking about David Kampf, someone that I know a lot of Habs fans have not been happy hearing linked to Montreal. But Friedman said, I also just wonder about Montreal. Like, well, it was brutal what happened to Newhook. Very, very sad to see. It makes you wonder, could Montreal look at something like that? And goes on to say, I don't know if they would be the favorite for him, but the moment I saw Newhook go down, I was kind of like, boy, I spelled suddenly wrong. That's on me. Might be placing a call. And we'll have a look at David Kampf. Now, Jesse, we've heard the stuff about how Czech players may want to go play in Montreal. There's been that floating around. Kampf, of course, there was a big disagreement with the Leafs. He's sacrificing the rest of this year in salary and all of next year because he wants to be in the NHL. But at the end of the day, he's a defensive center who can win some faceoffs. I don't know. Do you see a fit here with Kampf? Because I'm not totally a fan for a multitude of reasons.
I don't see the fit here with Camp, but obviously the fact that, Big Dog Elliotte Friedman is bringing up his name here again is definitely adding some serious fuel to this fire right now here. I think that this is very kind of like indicative of a larger situation, though, for the Montreal Canadiens, and that's that Kent Hughes is going to make a big trade just sooner than later. And we all knew it was going to happen some point this year. It's just the Newhook injury just kind of sped up potentially the necessity to make that happen. We know that he's been making the calls even before this happened, Josh, but you have to feel the ideal situation for this Montreal Canadiens team, which has shown a lot of promise this year, would be in getting rewarded with what, Josh? You know what I'm going to say. That big 2C, that big fish there, and then getting our depth to then really, fill in the bottom of the lineup. I don't see what Camp could really add over somebody that we could bring over from the AHL right now. Plus, we're going to develop them. I think those roster spots are important. Of course, we're going to get into that just a minute, right? How some added depth is coming to this team as well.
Yeah, for sure. And look, Camp is a center. I'm sure he could play wing, but a lot of his play has been defensive at center. That's kind of what he has been for the last number of years. And right now, we lost Newhook, who can play center, but Kapanen has been the center on that line. And we have Kirby, Dach, and Jake Evans manning the center spot on the other lines. And I know we don't love him, but Joe Veleno's also a left-hand shot center who has gotten some reps on the PK earlier this season, preseason, stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't see the need to do it because you're going to have to pay him some money. He forfeit his whole $2.4 million salary for next year. And I don't know. I don't see the fit there, but let us know your thoughts on David Kampf down below. Because I think just the fact that Montreal is now going to be linked to pretty much every name under the sun. I can't wait to see us talk about potential waiver claims soon, Jesse, because we need to fill out this roster. But look, the reason, if you guys didn't catch the update, well, you know what? I hate to be the one breaking the news, but I think most of us have heard this here. But Alex Newhook fractured his ankle on that play yesterday. He underwent surgery on Friday at the Montreal General Hospital. The surgery was performed by Dr. Greg Berry, and he is expected to be out for 4 months. 4 months is pretty close to the worst case scenario. I mean, best case, we were looking at an ankle sprain. Worst case, it is a fracture, and I hope it wasn't a compound fracture. Those are scary. But even Kaiden Guhle, Jesse, out of absolutely nowhere, he was rehabbing. He was skating. We saw him skating in full equipment, and all of a sudden, with a partially torn adductor muscle, he ended up having to get surgery performed in New York City by Dr. Zolan. He's expected to miss another 8 to 10 weeks now, putting his timeline closer to the Patrick Laine timeline. We're without 3 core players right now, Jesse. And, Montreal did make a move in Jared Davidson that we'll get into in a minute, but I think this really represents a big shift for this team, not only in terms of the actual lines. I'm thinking we'll see Demidov, Dach, and Bolduc back together, stuff like that, but also, what's going to come next with moves, whether it's maybe a Matheson extension that's more likely now, maybe that 2C trade just to bolster this team to really try and get us to the playoffs while these injured guys are out. I don't know how you're feeling, Jesse, but I just can't help but think Kent Hughes picked up the phone pretty much the minute he got these updates.
Absolutely, because for a team that really needs more depth scoring, for a team that needs, Demidov to be put in the best place to succeed, this hurts the Montreal Canadiens in a lot of ways. I mean, it's not a big secret. Like, we all saw what happened. An ankle should not be going that way. It was brutal to see, Josh. It's because, like, Alex Newhook, I know that's your boy, right? Like, he's been playing so good, just representing Newfoundland in just the strongest way this season here. There, relatively speaking, we still need to say the Habs have been healthy this year. These things do happy. There's still lots to be happy about as a Habs fan. I refuse to be doom and gloom when it really comes all, about this right now. And I do want to cite an important take, I think, that was given by Arber of The Atlantic recently, where he mentioned this could be a very important, opportunity, one that I really agree with, of starting to load up your top six. Because we saw, Dach, Bolduc, and then Demidov getting the run at the end of the last game. Like, you can say Martin St. Louis, he didn't have any other options, Josh. Even with all the chemistry we've had before, it's hard to kind of knock him for not trying it earlier. Obviously, Kaiden and Newhook's been playing great, but I'm going to love to see this new look for the Montreal Canadiens where, the top six is going to be clearly divided, your best offensive players. And I mean, that's what I mentioned coming into the season. I wanted to see are just our best six players. And what we're going to have right now, our top six, is going to be part of it. I thought that Newhook could really kind of balance in the bottom six with just a lot more depth, on that third line. He's playing amazing right now. Kapaden's obviously a revelation. But I think, just how it worked for the power play of, putting your best offensive guys there on the PP, I think it's going to help a lot 5v5 for the Montreal Canadiens right now. And again, who we're bringing into that lineup, I think, is also going to be able to fit really the identity that we're going for in that bottom six. But Josh, I'm not going to lie, even with the injury to Newhook, what's so great is we get a guy like Bolduc. So when something like this happens, we got depth. We know we still want to get that 2C at some point, but even the situation, Josh, the way that Dach's turned a corner this season, it makes me just feel just so much better when something like this happens.
Yeah, if this were to happen, last year, it'd be completely devastating. And obviously, it still is. I don't want to downplay this because this sucks. There's 3 key players now out for a long time. Though, I mean, I guess some people would argue 2 with Line A. I still think he's great, but regardless, that's beside the point. We do have those guys who are ready to step up. And I do think you're right in the sense that, this is the chance to go out and do something big because, Newhook is not just a loss on that line with Kapanen and Demidov. He's also a loss on your second power play. He is the guy who brings the puck into the zone on the second power play. Yes, they haven't gotten a ton of time this year, and it has been hurt a bit after Demidov went up to PP1 and Line A, of course, came out of the lineup, but he was that guy. They're going to have to switch that up. We're probably going to see Suzuki double shifting power plays even more now, which is more load on him, who's also nagged probably by his foot. It's never been confirmed, but also Newhook's been a great penalty killer for us this year. So there's holes all across the lineup to fill in. Guhle even is such a good penalty killer and shot blocker, but the first thing Kent Hughes has done and was made official is that they did call up Jared Davidson from the Laval Rocket. Now, this is a guy we've talked a lot about, Jesse, and it is interesting. It says something that it was not Joshua Watts, not Owen Beck, it's not some of these other guys, even some of the veterans. It is Jared Davidson, a guy that a lot of us have been calling for to get a chance. 9 goals in 13 games. At one point was tied for the league lead in goals. I don't believe he is anymore, but 23 years old. This is his 3rd AHL season. The dude was a great goal scorer in the WHL, winning the Memorial Cup with Seattle. 24 goals in 69 games last year. A lot of that coming in the second half for the 1 seed Rocket. 9 games in 13 games so far. 9 goals in 13 games, I should say, this year, Jesse. He's slotted in right now on the 4th line, but this is a guy, this is the moment now where we get to audition some of these young guys, see who fits in this lineup chemistry-wise. So if there is any kind of silver lining, it's that these guys who maybe were once forced out due to depth are getting a chance to audition and hopefully bring some kind of edge and scoring touch down into this bottom 6 that we just recently lost.
And that's the great news in all this again, because Montreal Canadiens fans, people have been watching Laval Rocket games, are very excited for Jared Davidson being called up. They feel like it's really well deserved right now. And again, I think it's really going to fit in the identity of exactly what we need, playing a little bit more of a physical game. I think, Josh, we'd have to agree that was one of our larger issues here in our 2 last games here, is really, again, bringing that physical edge. And Jared Davidson, again, only 6 foot, 183 pounds. He plays a much more physical and, kind of just aggressive, game than his frame would suggest. I think that's exactly what we need more of in the bottom 6. Martin St. Louis is also a huge fan of this player. Again, a guy that's very consistent, very reliable. But again, I think fits in that identity where we're going to look for that offense out of our top 2 lines. And then out of our bottom 6, we got to be bringing that physicality, Josh. I think if we can lean into that identity, we have the skill, we can skate, we can just bring that in. Again, I think Jared Davidson bringing an important element it could be looked at just a depth call-up. I'm looking, this is exactly the type of players we need to be infusing into the Montreal Canadiens lineup right now.
Yeah, like this is a sign, right? It's not the skill we're bringing up. Like, well, it is the skill. He's very skilled. Former 5th-round pick. Incredible story, by the way, for Jared Davidson. Love that he's getting brought up right now. But like, is this even a message? Like, yeah, I mean, he can be physical, but again, the goal scoring is there. It's a bit of grit. It's nice, but you got to wonder, like, if it's not Wah or Beck, who are probably, like, Wah is the most skilled of any of our players in Laval, I would argue, of the young guys. Like, I don't think that's a crazy take. The dude's basically point per game. But, like, a guy who can score goals, like Davidson, who can forecheck a little bit, like, you got to wonder, is maybe a guy like Florian knocking on the door at some point soon, right? We're going to start to see some interesting stuff with the Habs lineup. There's going to be moves coming, whether it's a trade, whether it's more call-up, send-downs. We're going to have to go a while here without some of our key guys. So what do you guys think? Will the next move be? Will it be a big trade? Will we see some guys coming up and down from Laval? We'd love to hear from you. That'll do it for this episode. This is a big shift for Montreal, and I think some big things are coming. And hey, if you enjoy, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. That'd be the biggest thing. Thank you so much for tuning in every single day. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.